Welcome to Data Driven Sports Betting. I'm A-Train Bets. I use my brain to make bets. And in this video, we're going to talk about how we set our book weightings and our plays screen filters. So this is some stuff where as you go through the betting process using A-Train Station, there's some things that you need to do to find the plays, right? And so this is something that we're actively enhancing. We're improving this all the time. So you may see some differences in what you're seeing visually and what we're showing here. It's because we've made enhancements to it, but we'll record this video again once it gets too far removed from what we're having here. But it's so important to everyone's use of A-Train Station that I wanted to at least get something out there close to launch where we would have this kind of help in setting your filters and your weightings and be able to use the station to the best of your ability. So the first thing is I always go in and I just wanted you to know that this is what I'm using for the bet sizing right now. So I'm using a $5,000 bankroll, Kelly multiplier of 25%, rounding bet to the nearest dollar. And this is a fair place to start. Now, whatever you have for your bankroll is what you should put in the bankroll. But if you don't know what these mean, just use those. They're fine to start with. It's just rounding bets to the nearest dollar is probably the easiest way to get going. So we'll do that. And we go to the book weightings. There's a few things I want to show with this. And this is where we are using, and we have another video on setting the no-vig line and understanding the importance of the no-vig line. That no-vig line gets created from these weightings and how these weightings are analyzed to determine those fair odds, the no-vig line, the no-vig odds. So these weightings are super important. Right. And so there's a couple different ways you can go. So the default weightings that we have in A-Train Station, you'll see many, many books. And really all we've done here is we've started with a baseline of 1. An average book is a 1. The only ones we've removed are either books that we know are no longer active or they are duplicates to something else or there's some other issue with them. So we only set to 0 the ones we know are just not adding anything to our market averages. Now, these are pretty conservative, but what you'll see is that there's some that we are going higher or lower than the market average of 1. So on some of these, you'll see like Bet Rivers, they're not quite as good. The Canby back end that Bet Rivers and some others use, they're really not that good at setting lines. So we treat them as 0.75 of a normal book, right? 75% of a normal book. Whereas you see something like Caesars, they're 125% of a normal book. They are a little bit better than the average. You may argue that there should be higher or lower. And if you think, you know what, Caesars, they're not really any better, you could just change it to 1. So you could do that, save your weightings, and then you're good to go, right? And so it automatically kicks you to the play screen when you save your weightings. But for this case, we'll bounce right back. It would say, okay, now we have a Caesars of 1. You say, oh, okay, I want to go back to defaults. Anyway, we use the default ratings. And what you'll see is that there's a couple books that we know are very sharp. And we've got Bet Online, which we consider twice the normal book. We've got Pinnacle, which we consider 5 times the normal book, probably by far the sharpest book overall. They may not be sharpest in every bet type, but being a global book that takes action from a lot of sharp bettors, Pinnacle is definitely one that we want to treat heavily in our market average weighting from our default perspective. Low Vig, another good one. They have Low Vig. That's why they named themselves Low Vig. The jokes are only so good. The Low Vig is a known book that has pretty good lines. They tend to track pretty closely to Pinnacle a lot of the time, but they are a little bit different. And so they tend to be a good source of sharp action as well. So that is where we are sourcing our default weightings. You're not going to get into too much trouble if you start here. Okay. Now I'll tell you, I don't use these. I don't use them at all because the more I've learned and the more I've developed my betting preferences and strategy as a sharp bettor, I've come to the realization that for the most part, I trust Bet Online and I trust Pinnacle. I set a 1 for both of those. And I say everybody else going to ignore that from a perspective of creating the no-vig lines and understanding the true fair odds, right? So from my perspective, I'm like, the more I've learned about the way sports markets actually work, the more I've come to realize that many of these books are just followers. They are not really originating numbers at all. And the more I find, if I'm looking for a source of truth, using BetOnline and Pinnacle has been far more accurate for me in my experience, but is a bit more aggressive than what many people would otherwise do. And so that's why I don't set those as the defaults. I use those personally, but that's why I don't think that that should be the starting point for all new A-Train station users, and so we set the defaults a little bit differently. The other thing that we do with the default weightings is that's what we use in our closing line value calculations. Now, that'll be a topic for another video in detail, but it's really important to have a broad-based market view for closing line value calculations, and those default weightings are what power that, because that kind of objective view from the game time start driven from our default weightings is an important way to be able to say, is my strategy effective? And it would be dangerous to have just your strategy or something as limited as just Bet Online and Pinnacle being the driver of all of the closing line value calculations, because that really should be a more market composite type of number. Again, too deep for the context of this conversation in this video, but something to just plant that seed and that nugget of why we're doing these sharp book weightings as a default differently than the way A-Train does it in his live streams and what I just explained here. Okay, so that's the book weighting. So I'm going to go and I'm going to leave these Bet Online and Pinnacle here since those are the ones I like the best. We're going to save the weightings and we're going to go to our play screen. So the second part of this video is we're going to talk about how I manage the play screen. I'm going to show you a couple little things with this that may not be quite so evident. First thing that we do in this is that we'll hide our already bets. And that just kind of clears up the screen and makes it a lot easier for us to work with, because I'm not going to look at anything. I just completed the live stream a little bit ago, made a bunch of bets. I don't want to see any of them. The minimum EV threshold, I typically am looking for 1.5% on main market lines and 2% on player props. And so I will often, and you'll see me do this in the live stream, I'll often set this minimum EV percentage to like 2.5% and say, give me the best plays first. Let's just see what the best stuff is out there. So let's do 2.5% here. Let's not worry about the specifics of strategic details. We can talk about that later as well. So I'm going to hit apply here. And we're just seeing what each little setting change does to this. So now you can see all of these plays that we have here, and there's quite a few, because I'm including a few books that I don't typically bet at during the live stream, and because they tend to have really powerful plays, like especially BetMGM, ESPN Bet Rivers. These are ones that I typically won't be able to play online because I get limited personally too much at those. The key to this is that, again, we're going to be focusing on the one-way lines. Basically, one way here basically means we're just looking at playing one side of the bet opportunity. So if I was looking at Jason Tatum rebounds, you can see here we actually found a play that has a potential arbitrage if you have both Unibet and Bet Online. So that's what this purple designates. And so you could see I could go play an arbitrage, but in the play screen right now, we're just looking at one side of it. We're just looking at the positive EV side of it. So it's nice to know that there's an arbitrage opportunity here. It gives us more confidence if we're going to go play at it at Unibet. But when we're looking at one-way plays, that's what we're doing. We're about to release, there's going to be an upgrade for arbitrage plays, and we'll cover the two-way settings and all of that a little bit later once that's fully available in A-Train Station. Not quite there yet. It's coming very soon. So by the time you see this, it might be there. So look for an arbitrage video. If that's there, you'll know we're going to cover the two-way lines there. 2.5% here on the minimum EV filter setting. The max odds, this is the no-vig line, the no-vig odds line. That is at plus or minus less than 250. And what that actually does is that if we look at this, the plus or minus 250 is really about saying we don't want to go too crazy with the underdogs or the favorites, right? We wanted to keep it in some range because the math that we're using starts to fall apart at those really far away from market truth levels. So we try to rein it in through that max odds filter. Now, the thing is that we've calibrated this max odds filter so that it's looking at anything plus or minus 250, anything that falls in that range for the no-vig odds line. But there's one exception to that, and that is if you have a play that could be made where you have a max odds for a favorite at the actual no-vig lines at minus 275 instead of 250, typically that would fall out of our search results. However, if you could actually play that favorite at minus 220, for example, you'll see it in this list. So we bring it in if it's something like, well, it technically falls out of that max odds range, but the play we can make falls within that max odds range, and that's something that a bettor would want to know, we include it. So there's that side. And then similarly, if the no-vig line comes in at plus 230 and the play you can make is at plus 300, we'll show you that too, because you definitely want that as well, right? So that's how that max odds filter work. If you aren't super comfortable with this, just leave it at 250. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Okay. Then on this final setting, width or hold, it defaults to a 40 width, but width is not a good barometer of market confidence for a particular book. It's what people use a lot of the time because it's simple to measure, but it's easy to see here. Like you can see the difference between the -157, the +118, that leads to a width of 39. But it's this number next to it. This is the hold percentage on our details screen. This hold percentage, and you can see this hold percentage also right here. This shows the lowest hold and the lowest width in that market. But this hold percentage is a much more direct reflection of the book's confidence in the lines that they're setting. And that's because that percentage represents exactly the percentage they're taking on this play to be offering these odds, right? It's the actual dollar value percentage calculation, whereas width is simply a difference between these two numbers. And it's a proxy, it's an estimate, it's just not a very good one of actual hold percentage. Why not use the actual percentage that actually matters? That's why we use that, right? And so when I'm setting my filters in the play screen, I'm typically doing 6.5% for a hold percentage instead of putting in a width for 40 or 45 or whatever I would put in. As soon as you put in that percent, it knows you're talking about hold percentage. So you could do that and you can select that and you can see that it really helps tighten up the level of confidence that we're seeing. And at 6.5%, that's a pretty good barometer across the board. And what's nice is that you don't have to think about, we like to do under 30 for main markets and under 40 for player props and all that. No, it's all normalized because it's the actual hold percentage. And occasionally you'll see things that you would normally see as being like hard to play at 40, 45, 50 width. And you realize, oh, wait, that's only a 4.9% hold percentage or whatever it is. So it's so much better to start getting acclimated to using hold percentage. Highly, highly recommend it. So these are kind of my default filter settings. Now, there's a couple tricks to this. So when you hit apply, again, it just refreshes the whole page. These are all the same. So there's a couple things to know where we stand right now with A-Train Station. There's some enhancements coming. There's a lot of things that we're going to do to make this even more powerful. There's a lot of things that you can do with the search. We mentioned this in other videos, but if I only want to look at NBA plays, I can put in NBA and I don't even have to hit enter. It's just going to show me only NBA. You scroll down here, it's all NBA, right? If I only want to look at NFL, boom, that fast, right? It's so fast to do the search or the search on this page. And you can do things like, I want to see everything except NBA. So I'm going to take a NBA with a minus and you'll see no NBA plays, right? If I want to see, do we have any player props for Brady Kachuk? Type in Kachuk and you get it, right? So those are the kinds of things that you can do with the search bar. It's pretty powerful. We have a lot more enhancements to go. Now, here's the deal. When you want to refresh this page, because this page is static right now, but we are constantly updating data in the background, right? So over time, what should be on this page would change, but we're not going to keep moving this page around because you're working from this page. We don't want you to get confused about things moving all the time. So we let you refresh this whenever you want. Now, here's important pro tip that is not obvious. This you can see in my URL for the web page. You see that my search criteria that I used and the filter criteria that I used are actually embedded in this line, which means you can refresh this page and it sticks, right? You can refresh this page and it sticks. You can bookmark these particular pages, throw it into a button on your browser, put it into a bookmark. You can come back to this. Those will be set. Now, the thing is, when you click this plays screen, you can even see it down to the bottom. Down here at the bottom, you can see when I hover over that plays screen, you see that those search criteria are no longer there in the URL. So if I click this, it's going to reset us back to the starting point, right? Now I can go back and I can return those and I can refresh and it's going to refresh that page with those filter criteria included. But the moment you hit this plays button again, it's going to remove and set you back to the thing. It's like hitting that reset button. That's the current feature set. We're going to be doing some enhancements to make this a lot stickier as you want it, because I think most of the time people want it sticky, but we also wanted to make it easy to kind of reset it and start over, because a lot of times for different scenarios, you might find yourself wanting to use different search criteria. Just like I was talking about, a lot of times I'll want to do 2% on the player props and only 1.5% on the main markets. And the reason for that is that typically on main markets, we have more books offering lines. We have a higher degree of confidence in the no vig odds line that we are getting. And Pinnacle and Bet Online will typically have a much lower hold. And so all of those things say my margin of error on main markets and alternate markets for like total spreads and money lines, those are going to collapse in and be a lot more confident. So I'm willing to take on less EV because my margin of error is smaller because I've got better data to work with. On player props, it's a much wider field. People really don't know. And it's subject to so much randomness because it could be, Julius Randle could have woke up with a cold this morning and all of a sudden this assist play is a terrible thing. There's so many things that can impact that and very limited information on all of it. Not to mention, you look at all the different players in the world with player props, there's only so much action that's coming in on all of those compared to the main markets where you have a lot of people are going to be betting on the game. Many fewer people are going to be betting on an individual player prop. So keep that in mind. That's why I set those filters the way I do, but I encourage you to experiment and find filter settings that work for you and your strategy and the books that you have and the time of day that you're betting and all of that, because those are so important to developing your methodology, which makes you a sharp sports bettor. Don't just take the answers that somebody else has. Don't just take blindly the plays that I make on my live stream. Develop that critical thinking around how do you play this game? How do you do it? I play pickleball for fun, right? And one beautiful thing about pickleball in the recreational level is that everyone has their own style. You have the people that crush the ball and hit it super hard, but can't place it anywhere. You've got the people who are super good at placement or very good at spin or, whatever it is. Similarly with sports betting, the more you can specialize and become an expert in a particular area, the more success you're going to have. And that's the thing, is that listen to the things that you like to do. Bet on the sports you like to bet on. Look at the kinds of plays and the kinds of books where you have success. Analyze it and always strive to make it a little bit better. But don't overreact to short-term results because that can just be subject to variance. So learn how do you overcome that variance noise to learn and understand what is my strategy really doing and is it really good, or do I have flaws in this that need to be corrected? And that's part of the game. There's a reason that people go golfing all the time. Nearly almost on a statistical basis, all golfers will never become pro. On a statistical basis, it's basically no golfers become pro. Now, granted, there's a handful that can become pro. Chances are you don't even know one. Most people who golf have zero hope of becoming a pro. Most people who sports bet are not going to become pros. However, you see plenty of golfers rocking $1,000 drivers, right? A-Train Station is your $1,000 driver for sports betting. You will make the most out of the time you spend sports betting by using software like this, power like this. And we think this is the best option ever created. But again, don't just take my word for it. Go explore. Try different things out. You might find a software or something that's better suited to you. Hey, go use it. Our goal here is to help as many people as possible start to understand what the game of sports betting really is. Not just the game of sports, but the game of sports betting. What is that really about? It's about using tools like this and understanding why they work and how to make it better. That's when you're playing your own game. That's when your hobby starts to really shine. And that's what we're here to explain. So when you start using these filters and you set those weightings and you experiment, and you don't just blindly go in and just play what everybody else is playing. A, you're going to get some different results. And B, you might find some edges that nobody else has found. Certainly find edges that are going to last longer than if every single person were doing exactly the same thing. And that's exactly why we've created these tools this way, so that they can be flexible and they can shift and move with you. We think of it as an instrument. We think of it as an instrument that you're playing as opposed to an answer key that you're copying off of. That's not the goal here. So hopefully in this video, you've learned why those book weightings, as well as these play screen and these filter settings and these sorting settings and the search capabilities that you have, will allow you to really explore and become better at sports betting. But remember, you can set this as a bookmark. You can reset with the plays button. You can enter in positive and negative searches. You can do these different percents. The width and hold are two ways that you can filter further. And then ultimately, the way to think about it is that when you're going through this list, think about, you've done the first pass. You've done the rough cut with the plays screen and these filter settings. Then you go through and you say, okay, let's learn about this. Anthony Simons, he's going to come in and we're going to look at this play and we'll say, okay, we see what you're doing over here. We want to see how it's doing on all the bet screen stuff. We got a video that covers how you do that. But then you come back here to like move on to the next one. And so you go through that process. So it's one hard cut and then one fine cut through the detail screen. You decide what you want to do. You make the play in the bet slip, or you make the play at the book, you enter it in the bet slip, and then you move on. And that is exactly how this is designed to work. It creates a process and you go through it. And that's the last thing that I would recommend is spend some time experimenting, looking around, playing with what does it do when I change this book weighting? What does it do when I, change this filter setting? Do I get more? Do I get less? Am I happy with the results here? Whatever. Make those determinations. Understand what your process is going to be. Take a little break, grab a cup of coffee, come back, and then hammer it. Focus on executing that process. It's like the difference between writing and editing. You're not going to get as far when you're editing while you're writing and you just get bogged down. Similar with betting. You want to edit the process, figure out the process in one sitting, and then execute that process in another sitting. And so when you've said, okay, here's how I'm going to go with it today, you make that determination and you fire. You go through, you get in the zone, you click on the thing, you look at the play, you make the decision, you go make the bet, you go log it, and you go to the next one. Go through that over and over again, which is what I try to do on my live stream. I get distracted by talking about a bunch of stuff, but that's what I'm trying to do on the live stream, because it allows you to focus and get into that moment of making the betting decisions, not the process decisions around them. So again, that's a really important technique as you're betting with A-Train Station to start to develop. And just like anything, just like when you get that $1,000 driver for the first time you take it out to the golf course, it takes a little bit of getting used to. A-Train Station is a new way of working and developing a sharp sports betting strategy and then executing that strategy in real time. Take your time. There will be more bets. Focus on understanding, make a few plays, under bet your bankroll. Go into that settings page and start with a Kelly multiplier of 12.5%. Half of what most people would start with. Start there, learn, start to build momentum, understand your trade, and then build on top of it, right? This is a long game, and invest some time working with the station before you're focused on, how do I pay for it? Focus first on how do you become the best sharp sports bettor possible. You start focusing on that, the money's going to come. The money, you're going to make plenty of money to pay for A-Train Station and take your family to Disney if you want to. The key is you got to learn. You got to learn to play, and you got to take those basics. Like when I took piano lessons as a kid, they were like, I wanted to play crazy stuff. And they were like, twinkle, twinkle, little star. And I'm like, I don't want to twinkle, twinkle, little star. They're like, you need to twinkle, twinkle, little star. Sorry, twinkle, twinkle, little star. Right. So start with that, build on top of it, and enjoy the ride. This is a hobby. This is its own game. And the more you see it that way, the more you'll realize how wonderful it is, and how deep and how multifaceted and how challenging, but then how rewarding it is when you do it well. So with that, everyone, thank you for watching what has become a long video, but one that hopefully gives you some really important insight into how to use A-Train Station and make the most money possible as you become a sharper and sharper sports bettor. So with that, this train is leaving the station. Until next time, save the units for the bros and do your betting like the pros. Take care, everyone. Thanks.